topic is about the global interstate system and global governance that aims to understand the structure and dynamics of the interstate system and to know the challenges of global governance in the 21st century and identify possible solutions to the problems in the United Nations structure and dynamics. So the question now is, do we need global governance? No? Why and why not? So as what the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, actually he died recently in 2018. No? So he said that no nation can make itself secure by seeking supremacy over all others. We all share responsibility for each other's security, and only by working to make each secure can we hope to achieve lasting security for ourselves. So the premise of this discussion, that the global system is anarchic. So later we'll see what's the meaning of anarchy, and this necessitates global governance to maintain peace and security. So if we will review again, the state is the legitimate user of physical violence, as stated by Weber, sociologist, and he said that the state is the legitimate user of physical violence. We have to say that the state is a human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. So if we going to go back to the definition of state, the state is an entity that has a monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force or violence within a given territory. So if we're going to compare the domestic system and the international system when it comes to governance, for domestic system, it's hierarchical. Government monopoly on legitimate use of force inside border, while in the international system, it's anarchic. Government lacks of monopoly on legitimate use of force outside border. They're saying that there's a behavior in the international arena. One is, although international and domestic political arenas differ, they also inextricably linked. When the governments weigh the costs and benefits of various international actions, their choices over the alternatives is inherently influenced by their domestic political situation, like what happened in Libya. So another example of this is during the Iran-Iraq war, when Germany opposed to the United States-led war in Iraq. So they call that Operation Iraqi Freedom. So they had three choices. One is to support war and get anger of German public or the citizen. Second, oppose war and get anger of the United States. And third, appease U.S. concerns about Iraqi weapons without going to war. So the leader had the high marks, and the decision strained U.S.-German relations. So how do we govern in absence of cosmopolitan state? Okay, so this is the emblem of United Nations, saying that peace, dignity, and equality on healthy planet. So UN is is the primary venue and formal arrangement for global governance. If you look at the slide, UN serves as primary organization for international cooperation, peace, and security. So it is defined as the formal and informal arrangement, produce a degree of order and collective action above the state and non-state actors. However, governance in an anarchic setting has been challenged by the self-interest now of major states and has exposed limitation. So the United Nations is authorized, it can authorize the use of force against an aggressor, and its primary concern is collective military security through the facilitation of peaceful settlements of disputes among member states. So one place where the world's nation can gather together, discuss common problems, and find shared solutions. So United Nations serves as the primary organization for international cooperation, peace, and security. That is the only international organization that can authorize the use of force against an aggressor. So if you look at while its primary objective is to ensure peace and order, the UN as an organization can be a conflict actor in itself or an instrumental for action driven by the interest of particular states. No? So if you look at the UN membership, how does a country become a member of the UN? So membership in the organization is open to all peace-loving states that accept the obligations contained in the UN Charter and in the judgment of the organization, and are able to carry out these obligations. No? So meaning the states are admitted to membership in the United Nations by a decision of the General Assembly. Later will be discussed what is General Assembly, and must be recommended by the Security Council. So how does a new state or government obtain recognition by United Nations? So the recognition of a new state or government in an act that only other states and governments may grant or withhold, it generally implies readiness to assume diplomatic relations. So this is the membership. Okay. So the UN has a charter. It established the 6 principal organs. Okay. So in United Nations is a membership, meaning it's directly directed organization, and the members are all states. Wait lang ha. Okay. Continue. So the Charter of the United Nations is the founding document of the United Nations. No? At that time, it was signed in June 26, 1945 in San Francisco at the conclusion of the United Nations Conference on International Organization. And it came into force on October 24, 1945. Okay? So let's discuss the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. The United Nations shall place no restrictions on the eligibility of men and women to participate in any capacity and under conditions of equality in its principal subsidiary. The first organ is the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC. Its primary objective is to advance the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. If you remember the SDGs of United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals, same with the MDGs or the Millennium Development Goals. So the ECOSOC serves as a gateway of the UN's partnership with the rest of the world for the coordination, policy review, dialogue, recommendations, and even implementation of international development goals. So 54 elected members by the General Assembly for overlapping 3-year terms, no? So this is the ECOSOC. This is the Sustainable Development Goals that I'm talking. Yeah, look at the goals. First, their primary target, no, is to end poverty. In relation to the function and powers, wait nga, balik. In relation to the powers of the ECOSOC, it may make recommendation for the purpose of promoting respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all. No, so the IMF. So the question now is, yes, what? How about the IMF and World Bank? So the IMF and World Bank are specialized agencies and independent organizations that are affiliated as well with the United Nations. No, so yearly, ECOSOC produce reports, but the World Trade Organization, since it's related agency and not a specialized one, is not required to do the same. No, so UN has little authority over these institutions, and significant reason to this is that they do not seek for UN funds. No, so developed countries channel funding to this institution because of the weighted voting system of the IMF and World Bank, contrary to the one nation, one vote system in the United Nations. Okay. Next is the next organ is the Trusteeship Council that provides international supervision of trust territories. Okay, this is the main organ of the United Nations. No, and it's under the administration of 7 member states that ensure that adequate steps are being made to prepare the peoples of trust territories for self-governance. So all 11 trust territories achieved independence in 1994. Though the council's operation was suspended and will meet on occasion necessitates it. No? So their function is to consider reports submitted by the administering authority and accept petitions and examine them in consultation with the administering authority and provide periodic visit to the respective trust territories and take actions in conformity with the terms of the agreement. The third organ is the International Court of Justice, or ICJ. No? This is the United Nations principal organ, and its role is to settle legal disputes between states, no, yung merong mga contentious cases, and to provide advisory opinions on legal questions referred by the United Nations organs and specialized agencies in accordance to international law. So all members of the UN are of the states of the International Court of Justice. So shall be the principal judicial organ of the United Nations and its function in accordance to the Annex Statute. The fourth organ is the Security Council, or SC. This is the most potent organs among all. No? When you say potent, powerful, with the power to make legally binding resolutions. Okay, it comprises of the strongest military states. So can we consider what are those states? So based on your task countries, the north, is it the north or the south divide? No, who are the strongest military states? And aside from being the strongest military state, it is a concrete manifestation of the reality of power dynamics. So it's composed of 15 members. Among them would be the states which are granted permanent seats by the United Nations Charter. So ano yung mga countries na yan? So yung tinatawag na permanent 5, no? China, France, Great Britain, Russia, and US. All of which are allies in the World War II and are nuclear states. Then the remaining seats are for the 10 elected non-permanent members elected by the General Assembly for overlapping 2-year terms. So the non-permanent seats are divided among regions. So 5 states from African and Asian states, 1 from Eastern Europe states, 2 from Latin American, and 2 from Western Europe and other states. So in Article 24 of the United Nations Charter states that the Security Council is mandated to act on behalf of the entire UN body to fulfill its primary responsibility for maintain international peace and security. Yeah. So these are some of the functions. Investigate potential elements for creating international tension, call for military action against an aggressor, impose economic sanction in other actions, and determine existence of breach of international peace and actions can be pursued. So they have the right to investigate any situation that has the potential of creating international tensions. Like what we watched in Libya. Okay, so these are the P5 and the elected 10. So these are the countries for the elected 10. So from Asia, Indonesia. Yeah, South Africa. Okay, so these are some acts of aggression. So the Council has the authority to determine breach in international peace as stipulated in Article 39 under Chapter 7. For example, in the Korean War, the repelling Iraq's forces in Kuwait in 1991. So, in order to ensure prompt and effective action by the United Nations, its members confer on the Security Council primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, and agree that in carrying out its duties under this responsibility, the Security Council acts on their behalf. So the Security Council shall submit annual and, when necessary, special reports to the GA for its considerations. An example is this one. In 1996, Madeleine Albright, who was then U.S. Ambassador to the UN, was asked by Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes in reference to years U.S.-led economic sanctions against Iraq. She said that, "I think that is a very hard choice, but the price is worth it." Okay, so some of the categories for crisis situations: A, threat to peace. Next is breach of peace, and the third is act of aggression. Examples of threats to peace as determined by UN. Example is the acquisition by a non-state actors of chemical weapons in Libya, piracy and armed robbery at sea of the Somali coast, production, trafficking, and consumption of illicit drugs in Afghanistan, humanitarian situation in Syria. Ballistic missile test carried out by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea or North Korea. Okay. These are examples of act of aggression: invasion or attack by the armed forces of a state of the territory of another state, bombardment by the armed forces of a state against the territory of another state, the blockade of the ports or coast of a state by the armed forces of another state. This is the case that happened in Somalia. Ayan, breach of peace. Any act of molesting, interrupting, hindering, agitating, or arousing from a state of repose or otherwise depriving inhabitants of the peace and quiet to which they are entitled. So an attack by the armed forces of a state on the land, sea, or air forces or marine and air fleets of another state. So the use of armed forces of one state which are within the territory of another state with the agreement of the receiving state. So an good example of letter E is our issue on the West Philippine Sea, because during the time of President Benigno Aquino, the third, we won in the arbitral tribunal based on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas that the West Philippine Sea is actually in the territory of the country. So of course, China did not accept and honor the decision of the arbitral tribunal in the case of on the issue of the West Philippine Sea. Okay. So to protect exposed population against mass violation of human rights, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. So another expanded responsibility of the Security Council. So example in Sudan. So yeah, the blue helmets. So during if there is an act of aggression, they must. These are actually the Peace Corps that facilitates the mediation. Okay. Example, what happened in Myanmar, the Rohingya genocide. At that time, the Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of Myanmar, the militarization. And now experienced the military coup d'etat because she empowered much her military. Okay, so instruments used by the Security Council to maintain peace. These are the sanctions. Non-military sanctions are economic, trade sanction, diplomatic sanction, travel bans, financial restriction, and diplomatic restriction. Okay. So the UN agenda expanded during the World Summit of 2005 in crisis, urging international responsibility to protect exposed populations against mass violation of human rights, ethnic cleansing, or genocide. So, meaning state sovereignty is viewed as conditional based on the state's fulfillment of its responsibility to protect its people. So if the state is incapable or unwilling to fulfill such responsibility, then the intervention of the international community is called upon to address the violation of human rights. So in this summit, that took place September 14 and 16 in 2005 at the UN headquarters in New York, which brought together more than 170 heads of state government. The summit agenda was based on a series of proposals put forward by the Secretary General. So the world leaders agreed to intervene on a variety of fronts to address major global issues. So the doctrine of responsibility to protect, or the R2P principle, first executed in 2011 in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi, with the implementation of a no-fly zone and authorization of airstrikes. If you look at the slide, Muammar Gaddafi is in office from 1969 to 2011. Can you imagine? It's 1969 in the country that is the time that when Marcos declared martial law. No? So from Marcos up to 2011, so who's the president in 2011 before Pinoy, President Aquino. No? Can you imagine how long did he rule the country? Official leader of Libya Arab Republic. Okay. Killed in NLA fighters in October 2011. The revolution, led by the Libyans, So the military intervention's legal status remains contested and is considered to be a failed case of international law and R2P, since the international community saved Benghazi but lost. During the time of Obama, this happened. An uprising against Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi began in February 2011. U.S. envoy Chris Evans, the first picture, arrives in Benghazi on April 5 and led the team that makes contacts with Libyan rebels. Gaddafi is driven from the capital, Tripoli, in August and is killed in October. Okay, so the U.S. consulate first reports being under attack at 9:40 p.m. local time. And then after gaining access to the compound, the attackers set fire to a building where Stevens, the U.S. envoy, and information management officer Sean Smith are sheltered in a forfeited safe haven. The building fills with smoke and flames. So Smith's body is recovered by diplomatic security agents, and Stevens cannot be found. So a small security team and Libyan forces arrive on the scene, and after continued searching for Stevens, the surviving Americans evacuate the compound and head to a nearby CIA annex. So actually at that time, Obama was the president, and Hillary Clinton, she testified before a Senate Foreign Relations Committee and lashed out at a senator who accused the Obama administration of misleading the public over the raid on the U.S. consulate. Actually, she described the moment that she and President Barack Obama welcomed home the coffins of the killed in the attacks. So such measures, however, can challenge the independence of sovereign states. The structural feature of the Security Council, actually the power to veto of the vote against the substantive resolution. So who voted the most in the United Nations? Ayan. So USSR, look at that. USSR 107 vetoed vote. US next, UK, France, and China. So what are these issues? It is said that the United Nations Charters was never intended to espouse sovereign quality. So these safeguards to sovereignty, yung veto, also serve as a severe problem. They said, when a major power is directly or indirectly involved in a conflict, it renders the body unable to take action in addressing conflict, as seen in the inaction of the United Nations, example in Syria. So, ayan. So, United Nations peacekeepers are deployed to provide security to populations and political and peace-building support to countries transition from conflict to peace. So, the left one is in Somalia. Okay. So, 7 of the 14 United Nations peacekeeping missions currently deployed throughout the world are in Africa. So, not only does the continent include the countries in which the Blue Helmets operate, but it also accounts for around 80% of the total budget allocated to peacekeeping operations. So peacekeepers seem to struggle with the implementation of their mandates. No, they're saying that the UN organization deployed to the country, like in Congo since 1999, hardly manages to protect the population against the many dangers threatening their lives. So the peacekeepers face the same issues in South Sudan and accused of contravening the principle of impartiality. The peace keeper is awarded. The fifth is the General Assembly. So it is said that General Assembly is the only organ with universal representation, with all 193 member states represented in the body. So the GA decides on essential questions with a simple majority, while concerns related to peace and security, budgetary matters, and new membership admissions require a 2/3 majority. No? So yearly, General Assembly meets for the annual General Assembly session and general debate, participated by several heads of state. So the body also elects General Assembly President and 21 Vice President, elected according to equitable geographical representation. So every session for 1-year term. So the Security Council remains to be the primary decision maker of the United Nations in all matters of international peace and security. General Assembly only make recommendations. Okay, so the Security Council remains to be the primary decision maker. Okay, the sixth is the Secretariat. The Secretariat is the UN's executive arm. No? Collective action in times of crisis may be coursed through the Security Council and General Assembly, as well as the Office of the Secretary General. Okay? So the Secretary General now is the the Secretary General is the Chief Administrative Officer of the United Nations Secretariat. So based on the Article 97, the Secretary sends a recommendation to the GA, which will appoint the SecGen for 2 5-year terms at most. Okay? It mandates the Secretary General to call for the attention of the members of the Security Council on threats to international peace. So, the shifting responsibilities of 3 organs, the Security Council, General Assembly, and Secretariat, ensure that the organization will not collapse. However, since the Cold War, the Security Council has been dominant now when it comes to decision making, leaving the other organs with little involvement and influence in international issues. So the SecGen now of the United Nations is Antonio Gutierrez from Portugal. Sabi nga niya, the sirens are sounding, our planet is talking to us and telling us something, and so are people everywhere. The UN now, there's a call for the reform. No, reform has only been met once in 1963. No, they said when the UN General Assembly voted for the expansion of the UN Security Council from 11 to 15. And then they state 2 distinct sets of criticism relating to the efficiency of the council and the degree of equity regarding power allocation. So, for the inequity in the country level, the problem actually lies in the overrepresentation of the permanent countries, the P5 that we discussed a while ago. In the regional level, there is lack of representation for Asia and Africa, while Eastern and Western Europe are overrepresented. No? Sinasabi na this is an overt manifestation of the North and South divide. So several demands as well have been presented by established of India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan for the G4 proposal calling for permanent seats in the council, while smaller states demand equitable representation for the South. Okay, so this picture is an example where Russia is vetoing U.S. resolution to investigate Syrian chemical weapon use. So Russia and China vetoed a UN resolution condemning serious violent repression of anti-government demonstrators, effectively quashing efforts to isolate President Al-Assad, the Syrian president, as it intensifies a nearly long crackdown. So the veto dealt a blow to attempts the US and its European partners to rally behind Arab League plan that would require Assad to yield power or to step down and make way for a democratically elected unity government. Contrary to these regarding demands, call for caution in pursuing structural reform related to expand the UN Security Council membership. So the difficulty for the UN Security Council to include rising powers into the power sharing arrangement in the United Security Council is due to the absence of the prospect for change. So these institutional hurdles are the P5 inclusion requirement and the 2/3 majority requirement in the UN General Assembly substantive decision. So for future reforms, they said that the awakening of the hidden potential of the General Assembly to counteract the powers of Security Council through the uniting for peace resolution. So this is vital, especially example this one, with 2 permanent members, ensuring that no international intervention would occur in the Syrian armed conflict. So the resolution ought to be finalized and fully realized and maximized, for it has bestowed the Assembly the capacity to check the Security Council